Hey everybody, it's Longhorn Confidential for March 17th, 2025. I'm Danny Davis with the Austin American-Statesman, joined by David Eckert, Thomas Jones. It's March Madness time. Normally we're out here talking about some football, but we're going to talk about some hoops today. Um, Selection Sunday was yesterday. Both Texas teams, the Texas women and the Texas made the cut. We're going to start with the Texas men since they are going to play on Wednesday. Just a couple short days after this recording, TJ is about to jump on a plane to lovely Dayton, Ohio, where he is going to go watch the Texas men play the Xavier men in a play-in game. TJ, there's a lot of talk going into Selection Sunday about whether or not this Texas team was going to make the cut. I believe they're 19 and 15, if I recall correctly. It was a little surprising that when they made the cut with how some of the things were playing out on Selection Sunday. I'm sure we were all kind of ready to hit send on that. Texas misses it. Start wondering about whether or not they're going to make the NIT, but lo and behold, their name flashed on the screen. They're heading to Dayton. If they win, they'll be an 11 seed. They'll face Illinois in the first round on Friday. But we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Eck. Did Texas deserve to make the cut? Was that as surprising as it may have seemed?
It was surprising to me just because I didn't think 14 teams out of the 16 team SEC would get in. 6 and 12 in the conference. Really, when you're getting down to the final 8 or 10 teams that should be in the tournament, you really are splitting hairs. They're all competitive with each other. They're to a degree, there's not that much difference between them. So then you just talk about deserving of a bid. And, we're in a different era now. We have these massive conferences, like the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC. So I guess we're going to be seeing 14 teams from one conference get in a lot. I'm a little, I like seeing some of the smaller schools get their chance. I feel for Boise State. They don't play in a power conference, but I think they did enough to deserve a shot. I think Texas will be competitive. They're a good team. I think other teams may have been more deserving with their regular season success.
Well, if you listen to West Virginia, they certainly think they were deserving of that, but we'll leave all that political nonsense for another day. Eck, when you saw Texas's name get called, were you surprised? Did you think that was the right call? What were kind of your thoughts when this Texas team got in?
Yeah, I think I, like a lot of people, was stunned that they took both Texas and North Carolina. And North Carolina came first, so I kind of assumed that Texas was cooked after that. But I don't know. I have a really hard time with a team that won 6 conference games getting in. Like that's I know that's not probably not what the listeners want to hear, but that's hard for me to stomach. When you have some, as TJ kind of talked about, you have some quality, teams from outside of the power conferences who had good seasons that didn't get bids. So, can Texas win some games? Sure, and I think we're going to talk about that. But I do think that if I were seeding the field, I probably would not have included them. No.
Let's just go right into that. What is this Texas team ceiling in the NCAA tournament? Are they one and done on Wednesday, or is this a team that can, recreate that 2023 magic and all of a sudden go on a run and maybe be a Sweet 16 Elite Eight team? TJ, you've seen a lot of this team throughout the year. What is this team ceiling?
Well, and this is we kind of get into the argument of why a 6 team SEC or a 6 win SEC team like Texas or OU is in the tournament. They do play good teams weekend, every week. They have beaten a good A&M team twice. They have been competitive with Auburn and Tennessee. They should have beaten a good Ole Miss team. They beaten OU. 7 quad 1 wins tells you they can match up with most teams. Now they don't have that consistency. Do I think they could string together, 3 or 4 really good games in a row? I mean, they haven't done that this year, so I would say no. But the level of competition in the NCAAs is not going to be something they're not used to.
Heck, what do you think? Are you
Yeah,
are,
I think
are you writing them to the Final Four in your bracket?
I have them in the round of 32, Danny. I do. I think they'll I think I don't know. I don't think Xavier is very good. I think Texas will beat Xavier, and then I don't know. Illinois loves to disappoint in March, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean the other thing, TJ, is they get Kendall Weaver back too. So, they played a huge portion of the season without him, and now it seems like he's kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. So that's a factor when you consider what they can do in March for sure. And I mean, look, they're gonna have probably the best player on the floor, even in a tournament like this in Trey Johnson. So I'm kind of with you. Like I don't see a deep run as any sort of possibility, but they win a couple, certainly would not surprise me.
I will say a quick thing about Kendall Weaver. When he came back a few games ago, that allowed Rodney Terry to play Tremont Mark at the point because you could have Weaver as the off guard, and that combination works. And Tremont Mark's really good at the point. He's a big point guard. They're a lot better when he's running point. So that may be the one reason I think they could make a surprising run to the Sweet 16. I don't see anything past that. I personally think they'll have problems against Illinois in the round of 64. I have Illinois in my bracket, but we'll see.
If Texas does go on a run, it's kind of weird saying Texas is going to be a Cinderella, but as an 11 seed who barely got in, that's kind of by definition what that is. What's kind of one of those lower seeded teams that may, burst a couple brackets, have people screaming at, TNT, the True TV broadcast or whatever these next couple of days. And also before we move on to the women, what's your final four pick? I'm just going to throw in here Montana as a 14 seed is going to beat Wisconsin. But um, aside from that, who's a bubble burster or who's a bracket burster and who's your final four? TJ, we'll start with you.
Does Gonzaga count as kind of an underdog? I mean, they're an 8 seed this year.
No, pick another one. No, I'm just kidding.
They're good. I think they're really good, and I think they're really playing well right now. Okay, let me look at my final four to make sure I get it right because this will be in the paper at some point. Okay, I have Florida and Tennessee as the two SEC teams to make it. I have Duke making it, and I have Iowa State making it. I know they haven't been playing well recently, but I like what they do. I like their TJ is a good coach. And I don't want to be too much of a like SEC homer and put three SEC teams in there. So Iowa State beats Auburn, and then I got Florida beating Duke in the title game. Chalk,
Okay.
chalk, chalk.
I like Colorado State. I think they have um, maybe the best mid-major player in the field in Nick Clifford, and I think I don't trust Memphis. Um, so I think they've got a relatively comfortable path to the Sweet 16.
I agree
But
with you
yeah,
there.
yeah, I think my final four, I did go for three SEC teams. So I went for Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan State, and I picked Florida to win. So we're matching each other there. I just think the Gators are the best team in the field by some distance. So.
Best team aside from Montana. Let's move on to the women's tournament. Texas, there was very little suspense on Sunday about their postseason fate. There was a question whether or not they may slip to the two line, but they ended up getting the third number one seed. They kind of had to wait a couple days to find out who they're going to be playing, but it's going to be either High Point or William and Mary as the 16 seed in Austin on Saturday night, a very late Saturday night. That game's not going to start until 7:45 at the earliest. So get your coffee if you're heading down the Moody Center this weekend. Eck, when you started looking at this draw that Texas got, what was kind of your thoughts on just kind of their draw and kind of their quadrant if they advance past this weekend, which they will, to be heading to Birmingham and then to Tampa, possibly for the Final Four, which they have not reached since the early 2000s. What were just kind of your thoughts about this draw for Texas?
I think it's a pretty kind draw, and you're the expert here, but TCU had a good season in the Big 12, but they do not strike me, with respect to Haley Van Lith as a super complete team. I think that's a team that Texas matches up well with. So if you look at the region as a whole, I think you have to like the Horns odds to get to the Final Four.
Yeah, I love this draw for Texas. If you're a Texas fan hoping to get back to the Final Four and contend for a championship, Haley Van Lith does scare you if you remember that Louisville game a few years ago. But I don't know. I just don't know if TCU is going to win three games to run into Texas in the Elite Eight. Notre Dame obviously beat Texas earlier this season, but they are not playing their best basketball right now. If they can figure it out over the next 2 weeks, that's obviously kind of a scary match for Texas. And Texas obviously has some work to do. They had to get past an Ohio State or get past a Tennessee in order to get through the Sweet 16 to the Elite Eight. But I think Texas is just the most complete team in their quadrant. Did not play like that in the SEC championship game, but you figure that's kind of an aberration as opposed to what you should expect in March. So I think Texas has a pretty nice path to the Final Four, which kind of leads us into our next question. What is this Texas team ceiling? I think this is a team that can win a national championship. Obviously, you'd have to get past a South Carolina, which would be, I guess, waiting for them in the Final Four, which is never easy. But Tampa's a little bit different than playing in Greenville or playing on the Columbia campus. So I think Texas would match up pretty well against South Carolina, and then obviously in a championship game, who knows what could happen. But this is a Texas team that can beat any team in the country. So um, am I saying they're going to win a national championship? No, but I do believe that is their ceiling because them versus any team in the country. I think South Carolina is maybe the only team I'd pick over them. I think they could beat a UCLA or a USC, and we're going to talk about Final Four picks in a second, and I have neither USC or UCLA making it to the Final Four. So obviously, I think they could beat those two, but I do believe this Texas team is as good as a UConn, as good as a South Carolina. It's just a matter of if they're on their A game or not, because we've seen them when they're not on their A game, and that is a team that is not going to win a title. But if everything's going right, this Texas team ceiling's the championship. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you just look at them and I mean, maybe they don't have the perimeter firepower that you'd like, but I think that's by design. So aside from that, there's really not a hole on this team, right? They have the star power, they have the guard play, they have elite interior presences, and I think again they play elite defense. So I think it's pretty ridiculous to say anything but that they can win a national championship. They absolutely can. Like you said, it doesn't mean they will, right? You've got to win, what is it, 6 games, in a row to do that. That's not easy, but I certainly think they can.
As a neutral, I want to see Texas and TCU because we all remember Sedona Prince from her time at Liberty Hill, not so much as her time at Texas, but I want to see that matchup.
Sedona's had an interesting year, and that's all I'm going to say about that topic. David, who do you think on this team, which Longhorn, when you look at this roster, needs to step up in order for Texas to win a championship? I mean, the obvious answer is a Madison Booker, but aside from Madison, your All-American candidate, who do you think on this team needs to step up these next few weeks?
Yeah. If we're avoiding the low-hanging fruit, I'm gonna go with Shea Holly because I think they're gonna have a game where they need to make a three or two. And they play fantastic defense, but I think it's probably a safe bet that somewhere along the way somebody's gonna score some points against them. And so if you look at the candidates to deliver that outside shooting, to maybe give them a shot in the arm scoring wise, I think she's probably number one. So I'll go with her. What about you?
Before the season, when I said this question, my answer was Taylor Jones, and it's going to continue to be Taylor Jones. I just think the paint um, points in the paint play is just going to be too important for this Texas team and what they like to do. So that's Taylor, that's Kyla Oldacre, who probably put a scare into some Texas fans yesterday because she's wearing a boot on their selection show viewing party. So probably some people were freaking out, but Vic says she's all right. That it's just precautionary, which happens from time to time, and she practiced this weekend, so she should be fine. But if Texas fans remember last year when they lost to NC State, Taylor, I believe, had a head injury in the round of 30 in the Sweet 16, was not allowed to play, came back and played limited minutes in the Elite Eight, and North Carolina State had no answer for her, but she could only play like 10 minutes or whatever. And so, they end up losing that game. And Taylor's a special player when you're 6'4", with that, wingspan. She's very hard to stop, and they're going to need her to be as dominant as she was during the regular season. She was snubbed from the All SEC team. I still think that was a ridiculous call by the SEC coaches, but 16 teams, whatever. It's, some people are going to get left off a 17-person team, but Taylor definitely deserved a spot, and she's going to get a chance to prove herself in the postseason. So she is my pick for the Longhorn who needs to step up, aside from Madison aside from Rory, who are gonna, obvious picks there, but I'll go Taylor, and Shea's a very good pick as well because we know one thing about Shea Holly, she's playing all 40 minutes, and so those 40 minutes are gonna need to count. David, who are your final four picks?
I always have a hard time. I'm so with the women's bracket every year, I just like I have to really fight myself not to just pick chalk. Um, and so for the sake of not picking chalk, I have LSU as my lone non-one seed, and then I have Texas, and then I have South Carolina. And hang on, I need to pull it up to find the other one. Who's the other one seed that I'm missing, Danny? I'm sorry.
You pick
Um,
you pick the USC bracket.
yes. U USC. Yeah, USC, South Carolina, Texas. Sorry. Um, and then LSU. And then I'll have a final of rematch number 4 for South Carolina and Texas. And I'm gonna have South Carolina winning the title.
Oh, I think that'd be a Final Four matchup.
Oh, sorry. This is why you pull up the bracket before you do this. You're right, it is a Final Four matchup.
How many SEC teams do you have with the men's and women's Final Four combined, David?
That would be 5. Just a little bit of SEC bias over here. It just means more in Austin these days.
Well, South Carolina and Texas are my chalk picks. I think UConn's going to beat USC. And then I think that UCLA quadrant, there are probably like four teams that you could convince me that could win that quadrant. I have never bought into this UCLA hype this entire season. I thought South Carolina should have been the overall number one seed, not the Bruins. So I think that UCLA is going to lose to Ole Miss. I love
Wow.
this team plays. I think they are way underseeded as a five. You can convince me LSU gets out of that quadrant just because of the star power they have. But if one of those players is hurt, that could definitely hurt the Fighting Monkeys. But Kim's obviously won a lot of games in the tournament, so I'm going to trust her coaching. Florida State obviously has the best offensive talent in the entire country, so maybe they can get hot and get on the run. NC State, maybe I'm just biased by what I saw last year, but I'm going to go screw it. I'm gonna go Ole Miss. Yeah, I just love the way that they played. They played Texas twice this year. Maybe that's shady in my opinion, but I think that's a talented team with some veteran players. I think that they can maybe get hot and beat at LSU because I think those are my two favorite teams in that quadrant. Although once again, NC State or Baylor may pop up too. So I think there's probably five teams in that quadrant, not UCLA, which is the top overall seed that I'm taking. But I'll go with Ole Miss. They'll be my wild card in this entire thing, and that's
Whoa.
once again based off solely how they played Texas. When Texas, when Texas had a bad week in Greenville, so who knows? It's March. Who cares? No one's gonna remember what I said. I won't remember what I said a couple minutes from now. But that's gonna do it for us. And we just kind of wanted to do a little March Madness, little intro. TJ has to go get ready, go get packed to head out up to Dayton. We'll have lots of coverage throughout the tournament, both from the men on Statesman.com, and obviously from Austin this weekend with the women's basketball tournament. And there's also some other things going on campus. LSU Texas baseball. That's a huge series. That's a top 10 series over at the Dish. Texas Auburn softball. That's a huge series over at McCombs. Those are two ranked teams. Softball in the SEC is obviously pretty good, and this Texas team's off to a good start in that sport as well, as expected. A top three team over there at McCombs. So throughout the week, statesman.com. If you can't make it to campus, which you should because there's lots of fun stuff going on over there, check out all of our words, and we will be back probably next week to talk about spring football because Lord knows we need a break, and they're just going to throw that on our schedule too. Spring football and pro days next week as well. But statesman.com for all that stuff. We appreciate you tuning in, listening to what we have to say, and we'll see y'all down the road. Enjoy your brackets. Hope they don't get busted. Go Montana. See y'all later.